And Mr. Bradigan.
Yeah, thanks. I feel a little removed. So if you can't hear me, just tell me to speak up. So I'm with the Department of Treasury and in Bureau of Investments, and I brought with me Robert and Greg, and we're kind of broken down. There's about 80 of us. Greg will cover this, but they all report to either Robert or Greg, and then ultimately to myself. We're career civil servants, pretty much. As I stated, I started right in college, actually working for Treasury. Right after I graduated, I'm like a double Spartan. I graduated in business, and then I went on to finance to get an MBA in finance. A lot of our investment professionals have MBAs or in finance, since that's what we deal with. But I got cancer right out of college, and I worked for the state after I graduated as a student assistant. I don't know if they let you do this anymore, but back in the day, when I wasn't going through chemo treatments, I was going working, and then eventually there was a recession after I got better and got through my treatments. There was a recession, and the state offered me a job, and there was a recession. I had just got cancer, so I said, a job's a good thing. I'll take it. And I've really enjoyed working for Treasury. And so with that, I just want to let you know, you have career civil servants. We're not political appointments in any way, shape, or form. And so we have that lens when we're making investments. Many of us are in the DB plan. Some of us are in the DC plan now, more and more as we hire new workers, they're in the DC plan. But we pick the managers on the DC plan too. There's a lot of confusion. Everybody thinks Voya. They're the record keeper. That's all they are. So if you have some money in the 401k or in the 457 and you go to their website, or you talk to Voya, they're just the interface. That's it. They're not the fiduciary. The state bids them out. DTMB bids that out once every 5 years or something like that. And so they're just the record keeper. But we bring all our investment expertise to pick the managers. And on the 401k and 457 plan, they're very low-cost managers. I want you to know that. Very low cost. So that's a good thing. Other thing I'd like to say, Greg's going to give the main presentation, but I'd say looking back on major changes, policy changes, which we had nothing to do with. There's a major change when Governor Snyder decided to fund health care, so retiree health care. Before that, and I think it's because he's a CPA, I don't know what his motive, but before that it was a pay-as-you-go system. So whatever health care bills came due, the state would just pay. But you're not really saving anything up. Like on the retirement side, the state contributes money, employees sometimes contribute money, and we save up and we invest that. But on the healthcare side, the state had never saved up any money. So there was nothing for us to do. That made our job easy in a way. There's nothing to invest. And the problem with that is you're not allowing investment earnings to help pay for future costs. And the problem with that is as we get in this demographics, as people age and retire, the baby boomers, what happens is future legislators, say 5, 10, 15 years down the road, look at this growing bill, healthcare bill for retirees, and those are not constitutionally protected. The Supreme Court, Michigan Supreme Court ruled a long time ago that they're not protected like pensions. So I would say when Governor Snyder, so actuaries and number crunchers can figure out how much should you contribute, should the state contribute to the healthcare to kind of make it viable long term. And that's called the actuarial required contribution. So how much should you save up, really, each year? And so Governor Snyder has really made an effort and has done that for the past several years now. So now we're about 25, the state's there's no credit here, we had nothing to do with this, but the state's about 25% funded on the healthcare, and that's up from like near zero. So the reason I bring this up is because there's an election, not the presidential election, but when, you know, Governor Snyder's obviously termed out and somebody will become a new governor. And if I was a retiree, that would be one of the substantive issues. I'd say, are you going to keep paying the actuarial required contribution, or are you going to just stop and use that money for something else? So, and the reason that's important, again, is you go down the line 5-10 years, and as healthcare costs increase, some future people who aren't in power today could say it's just too expensive and we're cutting back. They really can't do that with your pension. Once you got your pension from the state of Michigan, your pension's set, and the state's on the hook for that. But legally, I'm just talking from I'm not saying this will happen, but legally they could change the rules on the health care. And if they pass the law, I'm not saying there's anything in the works. I'm talking about 10 years from now. None of us know the future. Legally, it would stand if they changed the rules on health care. So it's really important to be an advocate, and I've been a pretty strong advocate. It's like, supporter of, once they started that, let's not turn that off. Let's keep making those payments to the retiree health care account. So, and I think I'll step back to speak nationally, because we do have a national election, and we don't seem to talk much about the issues. More like a reality TV show to me. But one of the issues that's really hasn't been talked about is retirement. And I'm not talking about Social Security. But on top of that, I think half of working Americans have like no retirement, other than Social Security. So it's a huge problem. And other nations have really addressed this, and it's kind of addressed through, it could be like a national 401k. Maybe it's not called a 401k. It could be requiring employers to contribute, because a lot of these kids hop from job to job, or if you're a restaurant worker or hairdresser and you hop, and you have nothing to supplement Social Security, that becomes a huge issue. So there is some move afoot, and it's going to have to be bipartisan, by the way, because otherwise it won't happen. But there's got to be a recognition that's not the best practice, and other nations have figured this out. So if you had employers contributing a little bit and employees contributing a bit, no matter where they went, wherever they went, and you allowed investment professionals to invest that money so you could get earnings on it, that would be a good way to supplement Social Security. Maybe not a total fix, but it certainly would improve where we're at now, which is really in pretty bad shape for a lot of folks. So there's just a lot of people that are less fortunate that, have never saved, and frankly, if you're a small employer, like you have a engine shop, right now it's all on the employers. They have a fiduciary duty, and that's really daunting if you have a small hairdresser shop, and now all of a sudden I provide some kind of retirement, but then I'm also on the hook for making all the right decisions. It's like, all I know how to do is cut hair, or all I know how to do is fix small engines, or all I know, and now I have all this retirement responsibility for my employees. So if there could be something done on a national level where you just say, you just contribute in and you don't have that liability, small employer, but you're on the hook for contributing something, and the employee is on the hook for contributing something. Over 30 years, that can grow into something somewhat substantial and a lot better than where we're off. So I think, there's high-level people in the government, even though this isn't, and in private sector and in unions, and it's kind of broad support. We'll see. Politics is like making sausage, but I think, for the UAW to get behind something like that and be supportive, that would really, it wouldn't solve the problem, but it would help. And right now I feel like we're starting from zero. We have Social Security kind of as a baseline, but we got to layer something else on top of that for the sake of the country. So anyways, that's my part of my presentation. We're a little bit more boring because Lori, you're asking personal questions on healthcare or on personal retirement, and we're a little more boring because we just invest the money. So we don't deal, Office of Retirement Services deals with individual questions on retirement and probably most of the questions you have, but we're just kind of busy investing the money. So with that, I'll turn it over to Greg.
All right, thank you. If hopefully everyone can hear me. If not, please raise your hand and I'll try to speak a little bit louder. We received a series of questions that I understand came about in meetings just like this, relating to how the money gets invested, kind of who are we, what we do, and things like that. I'm going to address those questions, and we've, in order to best address those questions, we've put together a little packet. Does everyone have this packet? Okay. If not, there's copies up here. So the first sets of questions that that we received were kind of who are we, and what do we do? So John mentioned on the first page this report here. This lists all the monies. I'm sorry.
Could you stand, please?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. I prefer to stand anyways. I sit too much. So this report here, this lists all of the pots of money that we invest for, and you'll notice State Employees Retirement System, the second line, at the end of June, a little over $12 billion. Yes.
Before you go any further, I'm kind of confused about the top. It just says Region 1D Statewide Retired Workers Chapter. I mean, does that not include 1A or, okay.
That was when she asked where the meeting was going to be held, and I told her this is the title of this chapter. This is for all state employees.
All state employees.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify.
That's a great question. Yeah, thank you.
Our state is divided into different regions,
Yes.
and when she asked, because she thought we were a different group, and so I told her no, and so that's where that title came from.
Thank you.
It's for the whole state.
If you turn to the next page, this is the a chart showing how we're organized. If you were to look at other states and their retirement system, how they're set up, they look a little bit differently, but this is how we're set up. So we have the treasurer on top, and as John mentioned, John reports directly to the treasurer. Robert and myself report to John, and then we have a series of divisions who are responsible for investing money in a certain way that report up to either Robert or myself. The takeaway on this page, all investment professionals, all highly educated, all have special skills and trained to invest money in a professional manner. The next set of questions that you had had to do with what's the funded ratio. So this is this table here lists the funded ratio for the state employees plan, and this information comes from the financial statements that are produced every year. The financial statements are produced sometime December, January time frame. Okay, and so the latest one we have is 2015. There's a couple different ways to answer this question. The investments, as I'll get into a little bit later, but the investment value, it fluctuates a little bit, okay? And so the accountants, the folks that crunch the numbers, they recommend, in order to, sometimes the value goes up a little bit higher, sometimes it goes down a little bit higher, but in order to get kind of a better picture, we smooth out the value. So we take a 5-year average, okay? And that value is called the actuarial value of assets, okay? Some would say, I don't care about the 5-year average. I want to know how much is in the bank today. That's the market value of assets, okay? The number crunchers like to look at the actuarial value. And so on the actuarial value at the end of 2015, the funded ratio for the pension fund was 64%. Okay? If I look at today's market value, I'm sorry, look at June 30th market value, 66%. So somewhere in the mid-60s is the funded value, yes.
Is this $10,732 or $10 million?
So it's 10 billion,
Okay.
right, yeah, so it's 10,000 million, which is a billion.
Okay, I see that,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yes, yeah.
Well, so this is the pension fund, so it goes up and down, but the market,
That's correct, yep,
but the market is doing well, it goes up.
that's correct,
But the market is just, it's right here.
Yep.
And if it goes like
yep,
this.
yep.
So for people that have 457s and 401s, does this affect them?
So within the 401k and 457, there's different choices that investors can make. And depending on the choices they make, will determine how much the value can go up and down. But this money here is not talking about any of that money. It's talking just about the pension money. Yep, yep.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. So John mentioned, beginning in 2013, the system began to put money into what's called OPEB, other post-employment benefit, which is your health care, okay? That value is,
Is that the 4% that we're paying in?
that 4%? No.
That's going into the pension. That's going into the 10 billion bucket, I think, for state employees.
We'll get back to that.
I'm pretty sure they made a lot of changes, so here's where the confusion is. If you're a teacher, if you're in MIPS or a teacher plan, which none of you are, teachers actually contribute, and that goes into health care. They were, so that goes into their health care pension. If you're a state employee, I want to say that when you started contributing the 4, I think that goes into the pension, but don't quote me on that. But they made a lot of changes, so it's hard for me to keep track of all the changes. Again, we're just investing, so ORS has all those answers to those policy questions.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Answer from them. We can't get a straight answer.
I'm pretty sure it goes into the pension, though, for state employees.
Yeah, that 4%
Yeah,
into the pension.
it goes into the pension.
So will we recoup that as individuals, the amount that we've put in?
Well, when you're putting in, you're helping to fund the pension system, and the state's contributing and you're contributing, so what you get is a pension check once you retire.
Yeah. The 4%.
That's how you
will
recoup,
change.
In other words, you never had to pay for a pension before your employer, the state of Michigan, bore all the cost, and at a certain point that was getting really expensive, and they wanted to shore up the pension system, so they passed a law to say employees are getting this great benefit, they now have to contribute a little bit.
So those of us that are still working and contributing that 4% are also assisting those that are retired?
Yeah, it's just one big system.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
You're welcome.
But it's also, but you have to understand, yeah, you're helping them.
We'll work a while longer.
You should go get some more food. Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
thank you.
box.
Yeah.
The question, or the comment I have is, when I began with the state, I was paying a pension. I paid into the system, and all the employees were paying into the system.
Yeah.
So when I retired, that money I got first, and then I went to the other. We, and you guys need to know this, we did not get raises for a number of years for you to take on that contribution, for the state to take on. So to say that it was given to us, I think is a false statement to this group.
That's fair enough. I don't.
It was a benefit we worked, and we had been paying into it, and we got statements on it and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, as a negotiated deal through civil service, we did not get that money. And when I retired, it was very clear, I got that money first, and then I hooked into this.
Well, Bob's
You need
better,
to know that.
yeah, Bob's better at the history. Again, we're just investing the money we
What you
have,
said was
but
not true.
that's fair enough. I mean, I don't know the history of all the different changes, and there's probably down the years, there'll be other changes as different legislators get, you have different people come into power and they make different rules.
And I
so.
think that helps to reinforce John's earlier comment that policy decisions will be made and they will impact,
Right.
maybe not people in this room, but people.
Yeah, it's very important who we vote for.
I remember working, and I worked 10 days and got paid for 8. And then other people worked 8 days and got paid for 8. I can also remember when we did not get any raises at all. But we kept on and kept on. And then I forgot, what was it, 97 or something, then they said, hey, this is the cutoff date.
Yep. Yeah, like John said, we're looking at it from how much money we have to invest for you to ensure the insolvency, right? And to ensure that you all and the people that are still working, that are owed a pension, that they receive the pension, right? So I feel what you're saying, I understand what you're saying, but that's not,
That's before your time.
that's not my
I'm
world,
saying-
that's not my world,
No,
yeah.
I'm saying
yeah,
that's before
yeah,
your time,
Yeah,
but we gave up
Yeah.
before.
yeah,
Your
yeah.
petition.
I can understand that. I think the first question is here.
Yeah, what is the time-weighted rate
Yes.
of return?
I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, yep, that's a good question.
Okay, yeah, we're talking about investments, right?
Yes.
And how investments help everything to fluctuate in terms of how much money we have to spend, right?
So the investments, because of their nature, they fluctuate in value.
And
Yes.
my question is, who is it that makes, my first question, who is it that makes those decisions
Okay.
as to where we are going to
Yep.
invest our money?
Yep.
Mine's, I would, and then I'll ask.
I'm going to get to that. I've got, there's information in here
Oh,
that's
okay.
leading up to. I think once you allow me the opportunity to get there, you'll understand how that comes about. Yes. Okay, so the next question is the next page. And it's, the question was asked to us, how have the investments performed over a market cycle? Okay, and this is a very busy chart, and I'm going to try to help explain that answer. So the top line where it says total plan, this top line, total plan, it has 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 7 year, 10 year annualized rate of return. Okay? And the question here was, what does time weighted mean? Time weighted is a way to, it doesn't take into account how much money was put in and how much money was taken out. Okay, that methodology is called a dollar weighted. So for example, this is just a hypothetical. If I invested $1 at the beginning of the year and the value went up 10% up to December 30th of that year, and then I put in $100 on that day, and the rate went down a little bit, my time weighted return would be the 1%. But the dollar weighted would be different because the $1 was invested for most of the year, and the rest of the money was invested for 1 day. I don't know if that helps or confuses.
So if I had invested $1 and got a 10% return, I get $1.10, right? Right? And then if the succeeding day of that return, it went down 3%, I would have over a weighted value of 7%, correct?
Yes. So let me explain why we use the time weighted on this table versus the dollar weighted. The time weighted allows you and me to compare the investment rate of return to everyone else, regardless of money that was put in or taken out. Okay? Because if we're asking how well the investments performed, it's not fair to compare my returns and your returns if my money went in and out at a different rate than your money, okay? Does that make,
Okay, especially over a time period, right?
that's right,
A year, because I may have invested more money than you
That's right.
invested.
That's right.
And in different plans.
that's right.
That brought different returns than yours.
So this methodology, this time-weighted methodology, is considered the fair way to compare how these investments compare to Ohio and Indiana and California, Florida. This is considered the fair way to say whether our returns were higher or lower than other plans like this one.
Okay. And so the question that we ask ourselves, and that I offer up to you for judgment, is our first goal is to ensure that the benefits are paid when they're supposed to be paid. That's goal one. And over the past year, 5 years, 10 years, they have been. The second goal, which is very close to the first goal, is to earn a rate of return of 8%. That's what we're asked to do. We don't set that goal. That goal is set for us by other policymakers. Okay, but we have been tasked to earn 8%. Question?
Me?
Yes.
I was just wondering, how long have you been in charge of the real estate section? Because that seems to be doing very well.
Well, so John came from the real estate group.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, because that's performing
Long time, Bob, a long time.
I know whatever you're doing there seems to be good.
You guys working together on this?
Thank you. No, we've been, we diversify, so there's always going to be some, we don't know, and anybody that tells you that they do doesn't know. Nobody knows the future, so we diversify. So by definition, some asset classes are going to do better than others because it's all affected by this whole macro environment and then the world economy now, not just the U.S. economy, but the world economy. So we're diversified. So the answer is commercial real estate has done really well the past number of years. I don't know if that's true. Nobody knows. That's why we're diversified. So what you do sometimes read in the press is about an asset class. Like, let me just push the pause button. Sometimes you read, like after the Great Recessions, so we're diversified, and in 5 years from now, there'll be some asset class that did real well and one that didn't. And we don't want to get to a lot of people have said, well, have second guessed
Just a very quick one. You mentioned that the 8% is
Yes.
set by the policymakers?
Yes,
Which is whom?
that's a great question. So.
Greg? No, it isn't.
It's set by the retirement boards of the system in conjunction with the budget director,
Okay.
The retirement group?
the retirement boards. So the
Or
yeah, so RS has, there's a retirement board that works with RS to set these policies.
along with the state budget director.
So, are there like citizens on that board? People who are ordinary?
Yeah.
folks?
Yeah.
The other thing I'd just like to quickly highlight is we have what's called, what's labeled on here as rank. Okay? It's not clear on here, but it's question here.
Are annuities and stock the same thing?
No.
The people that left like in 2002, it had a 457 or
Yep.
401,
Yep,
and they drew their money down,
yep.
or they left it up there for you to continue using. A lot of them told me they lost their, because the stocks went down, and some people got into annuities that if they had 20,000 or 30,000, and they still had that 30,000. The ones that had money up there that you all were in command of, they
question.
Or the 401,
401K or 457,
I'm just saying,
yeah. And
Some
so,
people that came out in 2002 left their money with the state,
yeah, and
and they
it's,
lost. And then you had people that took their 401
Mm-hmm.
and put it into an annuity and say they had $30,000 or $40,000,
yeah,
or even 10,000. Then when the stock market fell, they were still up here
Yeah.
because they had guaranteed
so,
money.
everybody understand the question? Yeah.
Money, but I'm just saying the ones that came out in 2002
Yeah.
that had both of those and they left with the state, then they dropped, they lost big time.
Yeah.
Whereas those who put their money in an annuity, their, whether it was 10, 20, or 30, 40,000, their money, they still had
That's right.
have it.
Yeah.
And then they could draw down
Yeah.
if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So is that the same way down, or the people who came in 95, 97, they had to pay in to make their own pension with their monies, right?
Yeah, those that came in, but kind of multiple questions or
Okay,
perspectives.
I don't know exactly what year that the state stopped paying our pension, was it 95 or?
98 is when they switched from
And
a
the
defined
people that
benefit
came
to a
in.
defined contribution, yeah.
Yeah.
But those defined benefit assets are what Greg's talking about here.
That's
This
what
is
he's
the pool of
talking
money,
about.
because those monies are still there for all of you that are in the defined benefit plan. That's what we're still investing. It's not growing because new employees are coming in and contributing or being hired into that. Their new employees are defined contribution members now.
Yeah, and since everybody, I think we were asked to present on the defined benefit plan because that's what most of you, I think all of you are probably part of.
Yeah, I didn't make a very good distinction at the beginning, but that's right.
Thank you.
Yep. So I guess the key takeaway to this table here is that the returns over a full cycle, especially compared to other investors, professional investors like us, have been pretty good. Yes? That's a great question. The provider of this information,
In order to provide it, keeps it confidential. My suspect is a state plan from South Dakota.
My question was, this is, when you speak in terms of comparisons, this is all in the state of Michigan.
no, those comparisons are nationwide.
Okay.
Those comparisons compare this plan to other very large pension funds like ours, nationwide.
So this is where we rank nationwide.
That's correct. Yeah. And again, 50 is the middle. Number below 50 is better. Number above 50 is worse. So we were consistently better than most in the nation throughout this period.
So the next chart and table I'd like to just quickly look at, or show you. This is how the money is invested. Okay? There was a question on how much we have in certain kinds of investments. So we have, looking at this table here, we have, at the end of June, 26.6% in equities, and then read down the table. There was a question that asked specifically about our investments in government bonds. We have about $2 billion invested in government bonds. In foreign bonds, we have around $600 million. That was another specific question. I mentioned the 8% rate of return that's assigned to us. And there was a question earlier on how it gets decided on what to invest in. And so when we make those decisions, the first thing we ask is, well, what do we need to earn? It's 8%, that's given to us. And then we make a determination on what different types of investments are likely to earn over the next 10 to 20 to 30 years. Okay, and then we consider how much risk is involved in each of those types of investments. And we come up with a plan. Our plan is list where we're at today is listed here. If you were to ask, say, 100 of qualified investment professionals like our group, you would get 100 different answers on what's best. But if you were to take kind of an average of what a typical professional investor would say to be prudent to earn the 8% rate of return, I'll point you to this next graph here. This graph here was in the Wall Street Journal sometime in August. That was meant to demonstrate what a typical pension plan like ours needs to invest in to earn a rate of return similar to what we are asked to earn. And I'll point you to this chart, this part right here on the right-hand side. This recipe for the type of investments that we need, that a typical investor would likely need to make, looks a lot like what our plan looks like. You can see a very low allocation to safe securities like bonds, a very high allocation to riskier assets like stocks, with some alternative investments like real estate. Okay, our plan is very much in line with what the typical professional qualified investor would have us invest in. Now, I gave you a little bit of a formula here. This next page, all I want to highlight here is that there's some wiggle room in how much we are likely to invest in certain types of investments. So it just gives you a sense for what we're likely to. So that gets to, okay, so we have 8%, we've got a big plan to earn 8% in different types of investments. Now we turn it to the divisions to where they get going, and where John and Robert and myself, we work with the different divisions on how to put that money to work. This table here gives you a sense for the diversification within each group of investments. So for example, in stocks, 27%, about 27% of the plan is invested in stocks. That's included in over 20 strategies across 1,300 securities. Okay? Not one strategy, not one security is going to make or break how our stock portfolio does. Down the line to the different different asset classes. We are very much diversified across all of the assets.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Now, this is just a really basic
Yeah.
question, but
Yeah.
like with my Raymond James,
Yes.
he shows me that he goes in, he watches the stocks daily,
Yes.
and makes changes as needed.
Yes.
One of the questions that came up at one of the meetings was Wells Fargo, and that our pension is invested in Wells Fargo.
That's correct.
Do you keep an eye on that too, or do you go in and change our our allocations to that? I mean, are things done daily? Not just particularly on Wells Fargo, but you're watching it daily?
The answer to that question is yes, we're watching it daily. I should back up on the stock market, on the stock investments. Half of the money in stocks are in index funds, okay? And so those, maybe you've heard of funds like the S&P 500, right? So those are invested in the S&P 500 and they're managed to replicate that index. The other half, we try to pick securities that will do better than the S&P 500, okay? And those are, those we are watching daily and we communicate daily. The other quarter, so half is indexed, half is actively managed internally. The other half, we employ firms to make those decisions on our behalf. Okay. And so we do watch those daily, but we don't necessarily act on them daily. We communicate once 3 months or so with the managers. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? What can we do better to make better returns? But hopefully that's a distinction.
Yeah, with the billions that you're investing, that's going to be just a little tickle, but, you know, that was one of the questions, just how often you're checking that out, making sure that our investments are secure.
Yes.
And
Every day, but I'd like to jump in here. It's a little counterintuitive. There's a lot of academic research on the stock market and investors' behavior. So what we find is the investor group that not only watches it, but then acts on daily information does substantially worse than if they had done nothing at all because they're swayed by their emotions. And so what we're always trying, actually, just a little counterintuitive, is to say, we think over a long period of time the world economy is going to grow. We want to participate on that. And if we get swayed too much by our emotions, we're actually going to do substantially worse. So our fight is usually to say, look, let's stay invested. Let's not get too emotional about the highs and the lows. Let's stay invested, and over 10 years, we will do better. And that's one of the reasons we have such good returns, is because when state treasurers come in, they say, oh, you know, this asset class has done really bad. We need to get rid of it. Well, that's true. It has done really bad, but that doesn't mean anything about the next 5 years. And all I care about, and all we care about, isn't, we care about how it's done, but we're always thinking, what is it going to do? So we always are very hesitant on doing this day trading thing, and we have academic research to back that up. We just didn't sit here and say, hey. So sometimes the best thing is to do nothing in a lot of cases, and research actually bears that out. And it seems a little counterintuitive, but it's very real. So for example, let me give you an example of the academic research on mutual funds, which people put their money in. Individuals can put money into stock funds. And as a group, academic research might say, well, mutual funds, and I'm just picking a number, have earned over a certain period of time 7% a year. And then academic researchers say, well, but how have the people that invested in those mutual funds done? You know, because the mutual fund's done 7, but if you're an individual investor and you can get in and out of mutual funds, how have you done? And the average investor usually does half as well. So the mutual funds might have done 7, and the actual individuals on average might have earned 3.5, thus destroying their wealth. And we see that this is true on a pension fund level too. It's like we got to just not, we want to be a little bit like Rip Van Winkle. We want to put money in good companies over a lot of them, and then we want to enjoy the growth of the world economy over time. And academic research says you'll be better off than if you're trying to trade. We do pick stocks based on values, but we like to be considered long-term holders and not daily trading.
no, I didn't mean daily trading.
Yeah,
I meant
but we're watching. Oh, yeah.
I think that the
Yeah.
comparison was to Enron, and how people, you know, And my own stockbroker tells me, breathe, Caroline, just let it go. And yes, usually something that goes down here is back up here
Yeah.
within a few weeks or
But there are exceptions.
There are
That's what we're looking for,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we were just, the question that I heard at the meeting was, are we watching those companies that might possibly be a new Enron? And are you, or you just say, well, that's a small little,
No, we try to avoid those companies, but the world's a big world, and if somebody's not telling the truth and all of a sudden they break the news, it's
Yeah.
like, Warren Buffett's the biggest investor in Wells Fargo, he owns 10% of the company, so if he didn't know what was going on, nobody knew, so.
Yeah. As John said, and as Greg said, we really have to constantly check ourselves and make sure we have a long-term investment thought process. We can't be emotional or reactive
Yeah.
at any given day because you put $100 into a stock in a company and now it's worth $50. Oh my goodness, should we sell? And we basically lose half of our investment. Or do we think longer term and maybe it's going to be $125 a year or two from now? Each one, stands on its own merits, but you really have to think long term when you invest. And that's why the return numbers, the 5, 7, 10-year figures are more important to us than the 1-year figure and the 3-year figure, because those are more emotional short-term and less indicative of the long-term viability of your pension fund assets. Jim, I think you had a question?
I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question. Tesla.
Yeah. That's a hot stock, isn't it?
I mean, let's
Controversial.
put like a football here, you invested, something in it. How does that's a perfect example, I think, of what you're trying to establish here in terms of that pattern,
Yep.
as opposed to emotion.
Yeah, and Greg will talk about it
Yeah,
too,
so
but it's all
this
about...
is a good time to talk
Yeah.
about it. Yeah. So how does Tesla get into the portfolio? So on the one hand, electronic cars and self-driving cars sound very fanciful, and it sounds very futuristic, and I agree. But I'll tell you who doesn't agree, and that's Ford Motor Company. They're putting $1 billion into research over the next 5 years. Putting $1 billion per year over the next 5 years into this technology. There's something there, okay? And Tesla seems to be a company that has an opportunity to seize it. So we want good returns. On the other hand, Tesla is a speculative stock in that they have no cash flow. They have business practices that are challenging the status quo, okay, to put it fairly, okay? And so, as investors, we have to balance the opportunity for good returns with some of the things that we just don't care for, okay? And so, we made an investment in the unfortunate thing, so maybe you guys have seen some of the things in the newspaper about how the state doubled or tripled, I don't know what the number is. Here are the facts. That is one way to look at it. At the end of 2015, we had a certain value in Tesla. In January and February, the financial markets got a little nervous, okay? We ask ourselves, do we really want to be invested in a speculative company when the financial markets are getting nervous because they're going to need money from investors? And we answered no, so we sold some, okay? Later, it became more apparent that the financial markets had recovered from their nervousness. So we bought a little bit more. The value that we owned at the end of the December, at the end of 2015, was higher than the value we owned in June of 2015. But the financial headlines was written, so it said, from March to June, we made a massive investment. Okay, so the facts are we had an investment and it was lower than to start the year. Fast forward to today. although there is great opportunity in this market, the return perspective is now being outweighed by the things we don't necessarily like, and it's being outweighed by simply better opportunities. Today we own no Tesla stock, and we made a profit at the overall pension level of a little over $12 million.
Wow.
So those are the facts, and
They're really,
it is a controversial side, and
you
there's no
know,
way around it.
they're really taking a bite out of like BMW at the high end. Tesla is really, you know, they're so expensive. The cars are so expensive, and they've got this brand where a lot of people that can afford really expensive cars call them $70,000 or something like that. Right now, they've really put a dent into some of the foreign high-end car manufacturers, interestingly enough. So who knows where it goes, but all these automakers are racing for electric now, more than, I think we wake up 5 years from now and it will not, right, it's, electric cars have been sold as kind of like, well, you can save gas and all that, and Tesla came in and says, no, I'm going to make a high-end car that basically nobody can afford except for you're really rich, and I'm going to compete against, I'm not competing on, am I getting better gas mileage, I'm going to compete on performance and the fact that it's clean for the environment. And so it was kind of a stroke of really being smart. And now you see like car companies like BMW and some of these rich car companies, they're like, oh my gosh, Tesla's eating our lunch right now. And it's just really interesting to watch play out. And he's had a profound impact even on the big three, where they're now, like, we met with Ford. And by the way, we own like 200 plus billion of Ford and GM combined. 230 million?
Not billion, John.
2 billion? I said billion. 230 million of, between Ford and GM, we own 230 million. So it's a big, those two companies who have a bigger position in those than we ever had in Tesla, but they're spending a lot of their money reinvesting, GM and Ford, into electric technology. It's a real sea change here, and it's a big fight in the marketplace.
And Jim, back to your question about why do we invest in companies like Tesla? Same thing, why do we invest in Wells Fargo? We've got to earn 8%, a positive return, and that, in this case, it was a bet. We won that bet, $12 million, that goes to you. It's in your pension funds. Help secure your pension funds, $12 million more than if we had selected something else. And we could be wrong on it too, any given time, and we are. But on balance, we want to be right more than we're wrong.
It was I mean, overall, compared to the whole pension plan, I think we had less than 0.3% of the whole pension plan. It would be, I did the math, like let's pretend you're an individual and you have a 401k, and let's say you've saved up $100,000 in your 401k, and you owned some Tesla stock, just like the pension fund did, you'd have $100 in it, you know, versus the whole 100,000. So it was, you know, it's a huge number because the scale's so big, but it'd be like owning $100 of Tesla stock in a $100,000 portfolio.
Yes.
My question has to do with your explanation about how you invest some things, you put some to other people to invest.
Yes.
When you put all that together, what is your administrative cost?
Yeah, so there's two ways to look at it. The cost to run the Bureau of Investments is somewhere in the neighborhood of, don't quote me on it because I don't, it's like $18 million-ish a year. That pays for our staff, building, copiers, our 80 employees, everything. So that's our administrative cost, which sounds like a lot, but pretty low. And then when we hire managers, we try to negotiate fees as low as possible.
So what's that percentage?
That's probably, we pay actual fees about 0.5% of the total assets. So 0.5% of 60 billion in assets is about 300 million a year we pay in fees, in actual fees. That's, we actually benchmark, that's fairly low. Sounds like it's a huge amount. And we're always trying to negotiate it lower. It's just like anything, you know, you can negotiate to a certain point, but if you're negotiating with an investment manager that has a great track record, they can attract a lot of money, so it's kind of, we want great managers, and we don't want to just go with the low cost, because if we go low cost, we're going to have, we want the best net return available at the lowest cost. But I think there's so much press nowadays focused on, hey, just cut your fees, and it's like, well, we do want to cut fees, and we've really done that over the past 5 years. We've cut fees a lot to investment managers, but we don't want to do that and pick subpar investment managers, because the thing that makes this whole thing work is the underlying investments. Are we being invested wisely at the underlying level? Nobody wants to wake up 5 years from now and say, hey, you cut all the fees, but our returns stink,
Now, when you say administrative costs, does that include, this whole board that you have along with these other fees?
The board?
I don't know, all the, yourselves?
Yeah.
Investment.
Yeah.
Bureau of Investment.
Yeah, so those are Bureau of Investment employees.
So that's in that.
That's 18 million
Yeah, our
a
computers,
year-ish.
our database systems, everything. yeah.
Pay for attorney generals, reviewing legal documents,
Legal fees.
pay for
You say that's
everything.
only point what percent?
Well, 18 million over 60 billion is like 0.3%, or something really, really small. Something like that, or is it more? Or it's minuscule compared to the size of the assets.
It'd be 3
Point, call it 20 million to
Which is-
0.003 or
3, put in percentage terms.
3%
3
of
tenths.
1%.
0.3 of 1%.
No,
No?
3% of 1%. 3 basis points, yeah.
How much
It's-
is that again? How many guys?
So 18 million
Put
over
it in-
60 billion.
Okay.
Okay, so it's spread over across the 4 plans. So that would be, if my math is right, it'd be 3% of 1%. So 0.0003.
3% of 1%.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's, so what is that? No, help us out, because I don't even know what that is. That's like 3/100ths of a percent?
It's 3 basis points.
I
Yeah,
guess-
that's-
But that-
that's
put
why
it in their
that's why
language.
they got defined benefits, you know that.
Yeah.
That's why they got out?
That's why Wall Street pulled out of defined benefits.
Okay, because of the low return.
No, because when you go to 401k, your percentage of administrative cost is higher.
Okay.
So therefore, the Wall Street people have more money than when it's a defined benefit.
Because-
Defined benefit because you have so much money, and you have just this board that works on all this money.
Right.
Our costs are less with them than it is in our 357, 401k, or XYZ, Merrill Lynch. Their fees are higher because it's individualized and we have less going in there.
Right.
Yeah, we use our scale, to Bob's point, our scale
Yeah.
drives down costs.
Just one last point, you've been very generous with your time. There was a question on voting. So when you own stock, when you're owners of stock, you get to vote on determining how the company gets operated. This is our proxy voting policy. It's available on the web, right, for everyone to see. Okay, how we and how other very large pension funds go about voting. We partner with a company. There's really like 2 companies that partner with state plans like ourselves. Okay, we partner with a firm called Glass Lewis. Okay,
Call what?
Glass Lewis. That's the name. I think the person named Glass and the person named Lewis at one point partnered up. They vote the proxies the way we tell them to vote. They research hot button proxy issues, and we confer with them on how they are to vote your shares. Okay. And like I said, this policy was updated last year, 2015. So we regularly review and add to this policy.
No.
Yes.
It's on the web,
It's
but
on the web.
it's a pretty boring read, but basically it reflects best practices in the industry.
Every large pension fund that you would talk to across the country will have a policy like this, and will likely partner with a firm, either Glass Lewis or the other one.
Okay,
Yes,
so,
yes.
so then, I'm classed as a state retiree investor in a statewide pension fund or something, or what?
No.
So you personally would be a participant in the pool. In the
Okay.
pool, we are voting the pool on your behalf.
Okay. So, I would then go to Voya if I wanted to increase or reduce the amount of investments on a personal level, as opposed to saying to you guys, hey, I need you to put more money into a particular
So,
portfolio or whatever.
so if you are an investor in the 401k plan or 457 plan, that is correct. If you're asking as a participant, as a pensioner, then that's what we are doing. We are investing money for everyone, including you, everyone. So everyone can receive the pension that you were promised.
So then we're just relinquishing our proxy status to you all, and you're acting on our best interest.
So functionally, that's how it works. But so it's not we all. It's us. I mean, so we're all in this together. The money has the ownership in stocks, and by owning stocks, there's a right to vote on the proxy. And so you are correct in that we are overseeing those votes that the shares have the claim to. I don't know if that.
Let me clarify.
Yeah.
So if you own, in your 401k or 457, you have an opportunity to own more directly shares in a company. You have the ability to vote your proxy the way you want to there. Here with the state defined benefit plan, you don't have that say that the state administration does, because the state is the title record owner of those companies. Your record owner of your defined benefit, which the state is guaranteed and said, we're going to pay you X dollars based on the years of your employment, so on, irrespective of how the markets are going to do, how that company is going to do, or anything. The state's taking on that risk. So the state is going to have the privity of voting those shares based on how it best feels, it should vote. Does that help explain a little bit?
Yeah, and because I'm just thinking, as far as Voya is concerned, if I feel that I can get more returns from a high-risk program dealing with, petrochemicals or whatever, I can go to them and say, I want to change my portfolio to include this whatever.
You can do that. There's separately managed account options in there where you can take on more risk or select more specifically. The majority of the lineup of options there of investment managers through Voya are mutual funds, where you're going to pool into what they invest in. But you can, parse out some money and invest individually. You're going to pay more fees. You're going to take on more risk. You're not going to have the benefit of a blended approach you would with a mutual fund, which is the approach we take. We're effectively a mutual fund ourselves, where we're investing all this money in multiple assets, thousands of companies, to diversify that risk.
And that's how I get back to Bob's point about the amount of fees that I would pay doing that, as opposed to allowing you all to do what you do.
Yeah.
Well, the 401k plan, the state's 401k plan is very low cost, because we run it alongside the pension plan, so we can build critical mass by pooling everybody's money and drive down costs there. So we have a low cost, we actually have a low cost 401k plan. I think Bob's statement was more general, that in general,
Because everyone,
401k plans of small employers, or if you're in a school district and you have a 403B plan, if you start looking at the whole industry, it's higher cost, but our particular 401k plan is very low cost.
but your 401k plan will be higher than the pension plan, right?
Nah, it's
Same?
Yeah, it's very similar because we have a good scale. And the beauty
Because you're
is,
getting that much more money into it.
yeah. So So
What
not
would it be
particular-
like if all that 401k money was suddenly into the pension plan with all those new members?
It'd be similar for our particular case.
Similar, or would the combined do better?
I think return-wise, academic research has shown that DB plans outperform 401k plans.
Right, okay, thank you.
So I don't think we'd be any lower cost for our particular plan. The industry would be lower cost than a DB plan, but we wouldn't be lower cost. Our 401k is very low cost, but I do think academic research in the past shows that our returns would be much better in a DB plan. That's past tense, irrefutable. That's what's happened. Will it happen in the future? Don't know. A lot of people think DB plans will outperform because we simply have access in the DB plan. Here's the deal, in a 401k plan, you know, it's tied to a person. So I'm in a 401k plan, so I really care what fees I pay, so it's low cost. So I'm in the state's 401k, that's what I am, and I watch it like a hawk, and I watch the DB plans like a hawk. But what happens is I get older, and I'm getting older, I have to make a determination like how many safe assets do I need, how many bonds, and when I start switching, like right now I've switched more bonds, but bonds don't yield much. So it's tied to a person, so I can only earn so much. But now if I'm in a DB plan, everybody's pooled together, and I don't care when I retire, I don't care when you retire, because it's not, I can make investments not tied to one individual, I can make it for a whole group. So I can think really long term, and I can invest in private equity, and I can say I'll wake up in 10 years. But as an individual, I can't invest in private equity because I'm going to retire in 5 years. So usually defined benefit plans, because they're pooled, earn better returns, not because the people doing it are smarter, it's just that they have a longer time horizon. Does that help? I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, but it kind of leads to the other thing that you had said earlier, and that is about, we're going to need a supplement for Social Security
Yes.
for the next generation.
Yeah.
What about the fact that some countries have only Social Security, and it's all based on what you put in it? So, for example, you can, your employer is better off, like Ford Motor Company. That money would have went into a Social Security type program,
Yes.
which again is regulated.
Yeah.
Ford Motor Company, after making that contribution, like with Social Security, would not be able to attach to it and say,
Right.
oh, I'm in a business problem, I'm going to take this money out. It gets regulated better so that that money's there when the person retires, and there's no chance of them saying, well, we decided to invest in electric cars, we lost our ass, and now we're going to get your retirement money.
Yeah, I like that concept. Where you pool it, maybe on a statewide level, or maybe it doesn't even have to be on a national level, but I like that concept of pooling people.
Regulation.
Yeah, pooling people. Our retirement system in the U.S. was kind of, it kind of started with the big three, and
Right.
Walter Reuther,
Right.
and he couldn't really get the government to weigh in, so he kind of got the automakers, and then the 401k was just a piece of legislation that was passed, and nobody even knew about it. Some accountant, they do stories, some little accountant found it, and he didn't know that everybody'd adopt it. So we haven't really thought about it holistically. We've kind of done this thing piecemeal. And I think what Bob's saying is if we think about it holistically as a whole nation, we could definitely design something better.
Right. And see, didn't Walter Reuther, his design was that he was going to push these companies to get the government to take it over.
Yeah.
That's what he
Never
really
happened,
thought.
right?
Never happened,
Never
it just kept.
happened, yeah. And so that causes problems for companies, really, if they're in competitive environments and they're not great necessarily at managing money, they're great at making things, and that's really their focus. And so it has a lot of the way we've done it piecemeal as a nation has had a lot of unintended consequences, I think.
So then, based on the debate last night, and they were talking about.
Don't base anything on.
That was hard to listen.
Because they're talking about, Social Security benefits running out at the end of the what, this decade or something?
And yes, actually, no candidate, neither Trump nor Clinton, is talking about cutting any Social Security benefits. That hasn't been part. So they're, on that one issue, they're very similar. I think what you're reading is in the press, like if the country doesn't do something to shore up Social Security, like in 2037 or some, then you're only going to get 75 cents on the dollar. So there's a lot of time to shore up Social Security. Neither candidate has, I don't know if they put together proposals to shore it up. But
What do you mean by shore up?
More money.
more taxes to pay into it.
So, other agencies maybe in the federal government shouldn't take money out of Social Security and not pay it back?
I'm saying as a whole system, for the whole country, additional money has to go into Social Security to keep it financially sound. But the problem isn't that big because it's so long in the future. So we have a lot of time to fix Social Security as a nation.
I mean, that Social Security is another whole issue, but very quickly, there are plans, there's legislation which, in Congress right now, that would quote unquote shore it up. In other words, remove the cap and a few other things like that.
Yeah, it's really pretty simple. It's not it's not a math issue. It's pretty easy to shore up, and the country has the resources to shore up Social Security. It's more of a political issue. It's more a political issue than, so I don't want to, your Social Security is going to be fine for a long, long time, so don't worry about it.
The other question is always the tax.
What's that?
The other question is when you said, oh, we need to tax, or they need to tax. You don't need to tax. What they need to do is put people to work. Because once you put people to work, that Social Security, as it happened in Clinton's years, they had a surplus. And even now, we have a surplus in Social Security.
Right now.
What Elizabeth Warren suggests is to tap into that surplus, put it in these seniors' hands, and these seniors are going to go out and spend money, and the economy's going to go up. So she's got another plan, which means don't keep saving it in the bank, put it out here, let us spend it, and everything's going to be better. I agree with that one. So it isn't always a tax, it could be, just use what we got.
Yeah, there's a lot of different.
And there is a bill out there to end unemployment. So that's another way of
Could I
showing
just
us
interrupt here for a
Yeah.
second then? I know we've got one more presentation, but can we take
One
a
more?
5-minute break from that? And then be right back for you?
No, we're all together, so I think this is it.
This is it,
Yeah,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
And remember, you can always find a list of the retiree benefits by contacting UAW Local 6000 Benefits Rep at 1-800-243-1985 or call the State of Michigan Office of Retired Services at the number that they gave you using the code that they gave you when you retired. Meetings here in Lansing are on the third Thursday of every month. They begin at 10:30. In Saginaw, the fourth Wednesday of every month, they begin at 11. And in Detroit, on the first Monday, and they begin at 10. We hope to see you there soon. Take care.